Greetings again, Youngstown. Welcome back to another episode of Belly Left Leadership. I'm your Superintendent, Jeremy Bachelor, and today's guest that I have here on Belly Left Leadership is our District Treasurer, Mr. Bryan Schiraldi. So before we get into it with Mr. Schiraldi, just a reminder to our viewers that, this podcast is a part of our ongoing, really celebration of Youngstown, celebration of what we're doing here in the Youngstown District. And then leadership. And leadership is what drives improvement and drives organizational change. And so this podcast and the Belly Left mantra is based off of, an athletic football play called Belly that really focuses on a simple play, really getting back to the basics, but being prepared and executing at a high level with everyone understanding their role, being tenacious about that role and executing it at a high level to have success. And so as we get into this episode with Mr. Schiraldi, he is our current treasurer of the Youngstown City Schools. And he's a former treasurer of a neighboring district, the Lowville Schools. He's a Lowville native, Lowville graduate, but he also graduated from Youngstown State University right down here, a few blocks away from where we are right now. He has a degree in accounting and a master's of business administration. So welcome, Mr. Schiraldi. We see each other all the time. We work in the same office. We work together closely. But I wanted to really have him on to talk about his leadership journey, his role in the district, and really also our finances and the work that we do together to keep the district moving forward with the goals of the district. But he's the one who says, hey, we have the money or we don't. So Bryan, tell us a little bit about your journey and what got you into education and what got you into wanting to be a school treasurer.
Yeah, so thank you for having me on. This is really great to be here and talk about some of this stuff. So like you said, my first job in education was being the treasurer for Lowville Schools, where I graduated from, which was...
How was that?
It was an interesting, a lot of the teachers that I had growing up were still there when I took the treasurer position. So, my kindergarten teacher, actually, she was still teaching.
Okay.
So, definitely quite a difference between sitting in class and then, your name's on all the checks going out. So
Absolutely.
That was an experience, especially in leadership, that, really kicked this career off for me. But now here at Youngstown, my office looks out over at Williamson College of Business, where I spent most of my college years. So it's been fun getting to see, where I started and where I ended up so far in my career, and being able to look back on some of those things has been nice to see, and a joy to see how far I've come. So
Bryan, you have family? You got,
Yeah, I currently living in Boardman with my wife, and we just had our first son.
Yes.
He's 3 months old now, so we're usually, if I'm not here, I'm busy with him playing and hanging out and all that fun stuff.
And he even looks like he got some sleep last night. So.
Fortunately, he's been a good sleeper so far. I'll knock on wood, though, because I'm sure that's subject to change at any time.
Yes, sir. All right, so let's jump into a few things. Mr. Schiraldi, Bryan, can you just give us an overview of the financial health of the Youngstown City School District?
Yeah, so currently, we ended last year with a fund balance around $23 million, which is good. It took some prior to me getting here, the previous few years, we were building up that fund balance. Mm-hmm. And now, based on my forecast, some of the projections we're putting on, we're starting to deficit spend, which means, if you're looking at an income statement, profit and loss,
right,
you're looking at a loss for that year. That's what deficit spending means. And then
doesn't mean you don't have any money in the bank, though.
Doesn't mean you don't. Correct. Yeah, that doesn't mean you don't have any money in the bank. It just means you're dipping into that balance a little bit.
Gotcha.
So when you start seeing that deficit spending or the profit and loss, the loss on that statement, you want to start making some changes and some decisions to stay away from there, so you don't dip into that fund balance too much or for too long.
Right.
And that's kind of where we're currently at. We're at the beginning stages of that.
Absolutely.
Towards the end of our forecast, it's a 5-year forecast, you see how that fund balance dwindles, and you see how it can compound and go pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
But that's why we do the forecast. We project out to see, hey, snapshot of today, if we do absolutely nothing and everything stays the same, this is what would happen. Of course, that's not the truth or what ends up happening, because every day those numbers change,
Right.
Whether somebody leaves the district or comes to the district, those numbers are constantly changing. A vendor contract ends, or we add a new vendor contract, we need to buy curriculum. All of those things matter and impact those numbers one way or another.
Absolutely.
Which is why me and Mr. Bachelor get to work very closely together, because even when it's not about the money, it's usually about the money.
About the money. Without full transparency, when he first got here, I'm like, hey man, we're having a meeting about some stuff we want to do. He's like, hey, you probably need to invite me. And I'm like, what do you want to come to that for? He's like, because you're going to spend some money. I need to be there. And so, but talk to us. You talked about the forecast, and
Yes.
I've been in administration for a while, and we in Ohio, when you do those forecasts, there's a formula, or actually a train of thought to those. And when you're moving into a deficit potentially, is that common with forecast, or is that not common? Or
So yes and no. Again, it's a snapshot of today, what you think the next 5 years are going to be, and although it's not just a random guess,
Right.
It's an educated guess. That's why
there you go.
I am part of the organizations I'm part of. I talk to a lot of other treasurers. I see what's going on in the state. I go to these conferences because I need to know, the state they have a biannual budget that dictates our state funding formula. That's how we get money from the state.
Right.
So I have to, be
Watch
talking
the
with treasurers, watch the
legislation.
legislation, go to these conferences so I can have an idea of what's coming. Same with tax revenues. Our property taxes are, I think, our second biggest revenue source. So, knowing what the county auditors are thinking and projecting and those types of things, I have to be aware of, so I know what revenues are coming in. A spending deficit isn't rare, especially when you're looking at the end of the 5 years.
Right.
It's hard to know for sure, because you want to be somewhat conservative. You don't want to say, well, I think we're going to get $1 billion coming in from the state.
Right.
Because that's probably not true.
Not going to happen.
Would be nice, but not true.
Right.
So you try to be a little conservative in some of your revenue projections, because, at the end of the day, you don't have 100% confirmation of what's going to happen.
Absolutely.
It's an educated guess. I meet with a lot of people. I talk and, examine a lot of things to make sure it's an educated
Absolutely.
and as accurate as possible. But at the end of the day, like I said, it could change.
Yeah.
I don't know that the legislature is I don't know what they're going to approve.
Right.
I have an assumption that it might be somewhere along those lines, but I don't know for sure. Same with expenditures. That's why we develop things like capital improvement plans and curriculum adoption plans. So I have a better chance of knowing, and the district knows, when we're going to be spending certain items. So those go a long way into, so something big doesn't pop up. But at the end of the day, a big expense could pop up and change it. So although spending deficits aren't rare, especially at the end of a forecast life, when you see the fund balance deficit is when, you start wanting to implement things to make sure you don't get there. So, but that's how school finance goes. It ebbs and flows, goes up and down. Some years are going to be better than others, because some years you might have to fix a roof, other years you don't. You might be in a period where a lot of your staff is older and getting ready to retire. And once they do, usually it's younger people with lower salaries. So there's a lot that plays in. Some years are going to be good, just like any business. It goes up and down. It's a roller coaster. Some years are good, some years are bad. You just have to know where you're headed so you can make the right decisions.
So it's a roadmap. We fair to say we have a roadmap, yes. And then when you have that map, you kind of want to follow it and to get where you say you're trying to go. But that we might need to make some adjustments. And then, like you said, maybe there's a detour along the way, and then we have to adjust a little bit more. So it's an educated guess that gives us a roadmap to make good decisions on behalf of the district. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is educate scholars and give them a quality experience. And so, we're not in the business of making money, but we're not in the business of deficit spending either. So Correct. That's what we want to work on, and that's what you and I have been working together on. So, talk a little bit about the budgeting process in Youngstown, or what that you're trying to develop here in Youngstown.
Yeah, so we try to be as collaborative as possible. Although I sit in as many meetings as possible, I don't always know every single little thing. I'm not an academic professional. I'm about numbers, so I like to get as many people involved as possible because they know their departments, they know what their needs are, and my job is to help guide them and lay out what that would look like. So we try to be as collaborative as possible. Mr. Bachelor has a budget. I have a budget for my department.
Mhm.
Each department has their own budget, and eventually we'd like to expand it to get more involvement from the principals and the buildings,
Mhm.
so they can be a little more hands-on with the funds they receive and how they're being utilized. That's definitely a goal Mr. and Bachelor and I both have, and we're
Mhm.
working towards. But right now, really, it's between the department heads, and
Mhm.
it does trickle down to the principals to
Right.
talk about, not just general fund, but they also have title and grant funds that they use that they
Right.
get to
Right.
work with our grants department on to, discuss how they want to use it, where they want to implement stuff at. And it's important to have that collaborative process because, like I said, I know the financials and how much we can spend,
Right.
but I don't always know what the best thing to spend it on. That's why we all have to work together, and
Mhm.
it's not just a singular decision. It's a lot of people working together to determine, hey, this is the funding we have or the resources we have. These are our options. What do we think is going to be best for the district?
I would say that's what we've been trying to build towards, and we are building towards, and that collaboration is key. Like I said, he's the numbers guy. Um, you know, I'm the programming guy, but I also have to understand the numbers. And
Yeah.
so when he says, "Hey, yeah, I know you want to do X, Y, and Z, but this is our finite budget for this, or this is how this money has to be spent this way." So and let's one of the things that's kind of been, the elephant in the room is, that we had $78 million of ESSER funding.
Yes.
Um, Explain to the people that how that money had to be spent and what it could be spent on, and could it be put back in the general fund for us to just balance the budget?
No, it had to be used very specifically. It was federal grant money, and any grant, especially federal grant, has specific guidelines that you have to follow and purpose for those funds. So as long as it fit the purpose of the funds, which was really the focus on COVID,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of safety. That was kind of the big deal was safety. Up upgrading your
Infrastructure a little bit.
upgrading
Yeah.
infrastructure. A lot of HVAC projects were done. Um, so no, we couldn't just inject it into our general fund
Right.
to $78 million into our general fund, and no, look, we're good. It had to be used on specific things. It had to be used within specific timelines. So even if we do an HVAC project, it has to be within that
Right.
grant period. So can't be something that's continuing on for the next 10
You
years.
can't save it and then use it in
Correct.
2037.
And then when the grant period ends, anything that leaves a cost there would eventually come into your general fund. And that's what a lot of districts are staring at is
Mm-hmm.
they might have started something new or brought on new people or, signed vendor contracts or something that they plan to continue and they need to find a way to bring it into their general
Right.
fund. So a lot of districts are staring at, a lot of shortfalls because of planning for those ESSER fund expenses to come into the general fund. Um, our district doesn't have quite as much of that as a lot of districts do. So our planning to, take on some of the brunt of some of those costs isn't as significant as other districts. So it's not as big of a concern for us because a lot of the stuff we did was, our HVAC project.
Right.
That's that's going to be
for
done
now anyway.
Yeah, for now.
Right. Yeah.
Until a repair or maintenance.
All right. Um, so you've already talked a little bit about some of the things that we're already doing
Yes.
to really work together, look at all budgets, look at all programs, and you mentioned already, we have a snapshot, but we're not gonna. I won't be here if we get to $17 million in a deficit.
And neither will
please. So we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that we continue to offer high levels of services, but be tighten the belt some and repurpose some things, and maybe my senior leadership will tell you they've been asked to do more with less since I become the superintendent. So we're going to continue to go down that path and really hone in on best practices, being able to put the resources where they're making an actual impact, though, and measuring whether those resources are actually doing those things. So I appreciate the collaboration that we've had over the since September or August when I was officially named superintendent.
And honestly, I mean, the outlook is really an opportunity for the district. Since the board came back, we're the school district we used to be. It's a chance for us to look at strategically where we want to go again.
Absolutely.
The district has been through a lot, and now's the time where we get to sit down and say, hey, we know we have some decisions to make, but this is where we see us in the future. So let's start implementing a way to get there. So although sometimes could look daunting, it could also be an opportunity for us to all, get on the same page, hop in the boat and start rowing in the same direction, which might not have been the case for a long time, but is definitely the case. I feel is the case now, and we're doing the things we need to do to reach that final end point.
I couldn't agree more. For those who don't know, in the school district, there are two individuals that the school board interviews, hires, and evaluates. And those two individuals are us. Everybody else kind of works through us for the board, but we are directly employees of the board. And I think I can speak for Bryan that it's been a good transition. In working with the board through, we've had our obstacles, we've had some things, but every obstacle is an opportunity, I believe. And the board has been clear about what their expectations are, and we've been clear about the direction we believe is best for the district. And we've worked together through those things. And so the relationship that he and I have with the board, I believe, is positive right now. And they ask tough questions, as they should. And then we collaborate together with our teams and make sure we're able to give them the information that they need to make, because they have to make the final vote on recommendations that we bring forward. And it's really good that they can trust us and we can trust them. That's a win-win for our community and for our school district. So Bryan, I'm going to go to leadership. I mean, you are, you're the treasurer. And like I said, you are the individual that reports to our board on all of our finances. And you have a department and some folks that work for you. How do you define leadership?
I think leadership is, really the ability to influence and guide people in a certain direction. Leadership doesn't necessarily mean authority. You can have authority and not be a leader, and you could be a leader and have absolutely no authority. Leaders are
down, man.
Leaders are usually, they're that person people kind of flock to a little bit. Within our departments, we all see like who a leader might be because people gravitate towards that person. So that's what leadership is to me. Like, are you a person who is going to influence people to, go the right direction or go the direction that everyone, we should be going in. Not necessarily anything to do with like authority or anything like that. Like I said, when I started at Lowville, I was now, I had teachers who taught me. I was sitting in the classroom, and they were, they were the ones with the authority and the leadership. And now I'm in a different seat, so I have to find a way to, be a leader for someone in that situation, and that's not always easy, but it's working with them and trying to provide that guidance and influence to get them on the same page as you and in the direction that everybody should be going.
Well, as we move towards the end of our segment, are there any last words you want to give, anything you want to tell the community, or anything you want to educate the community on, or any advice you want to give for potential treasurers out there?
No, I just want to say, it's been a great experience so far in Youngstown City School District. Compared to Lowville, this is a much bigger district, and the community of Youngstown it's very special, and I hope we continue to work together and go in the same direction. We're a large district in this area,
right.
So it's important that we come together not only as a district, our staff, our administration, our board, but also the community. The community support is huge. and getting that buy-in from the community is something Mr. Bachelor and I are very keen on working on. And, we want to harvest those relationships and continue to grow together so we can be successful. Because, the health of our school district, it signifies the health of our community. So
Absolutely.
if we can do well, the community will continue to do well. So we want, just the same as we want to support the community, we hope this community continues to support us. And a lot of the time, the community has shown great support, and we do appreciate that. So,
And I'll just echo that. We back last November they did.
yeah,
Vote
absolutely.
to renewal of the levy. So we do thank the Youngstown community for that as a renewal. No new taxes, but a renewal, so we can continue to operate as we do with some adjustments, as you just heard. So I could just echo in Bryan's sentiments. We do believe, again, relationships matter, and this is your school district, Youngstown. So we need you at the table. We need you to let us know how we're doing, but also be involved in what we're doing. So things that the community says it wants to see are the things that should drive our budget and our resource allocation. So I'm thankful, Bryan, for your time, taking the time to come over. Thankful for the relationship that we have developed over the year and working together through some tough times and some good times, and we'll continue to do so. We're going to continue to run it until they stop it. Thank you.
This podcast is the property of Schofin Broadcasting and Youngstown City Schools. Schofin Audio and Video Broadcasting Studios recorded and produced this episode.